Hello, my name is Debbie Fingas. I'm the Minister of Music at Trinity United Church in Cobourg, and I'm here today to talk to you about chimes. Hand chimes are, they're these. This is a Malmark hand chime, because we have Malmarks, but there are three main manufacturers. There's Malmark and Schulmerich, who have melody chimes, which are the same thing, but theirs have like the corners cut off of theirs. They're just a different shape, but they sound very, very similar, and they're played the same way. And then there's the Suzuki tone chimes as well. Chimes are lightweight, which makes them ideal for little hands of children and elderly people who have trouble with some of the larger handbells. They're quite light, especially for the lower tones. They're inexpensive, probably costing about 10% of bells, and that's can make them nice addition to a set of handbells or to be used instead of bells. But they have a fragile clapper system. So they have a reputation of being good for kids because they're more robust. I don't know that that's true. They're definitely lighter and cheaper, but this mallet being, the clapper being on the outside of your chime, is really great for kids to kind of yank at and hit on things, and they're quite fragile. So that's something to be aware of and careful of. They have a pure tone. They don't have any overtones at all. They're more like a tuning fork that way. And so that's different to a bell, who has lots of overtones. And bells can kind of cut through an ensemble, but these just kind of, and they just go on and on. Very pure sound. Large chimes, really big ones that I don't have any, but they stand in these racks, and they're malleted on the racks so that you're not, manipulating a chime that's too big. So to ring and damp your chime, you hold your chime just like this, just with your hand gripped around it. This is not a thumb rest, just like this. And you ring it just like a bell. So we just have a little flick, nice circular motion, and damp on the shoulder. Now you'll notice that I didn't damp the same way as a bell because the clapper that's fragile is in the way. So we have to turn in and damp like that. You'll see some people, when they ring chimes, they cross to the other shoulder. I don't recommend that because we have problems then when you have two with them possibly hitting each other and those sorts of things. And it's just, you don't need to do that. You can stay right on your same shoulder. So what other things can chimes do other than ring and damp? Well, you can do stopped sounds. So if you have your finger and you put it over the slot there, that's how you get a stopped sound on a chime. Vibrato is nicely achieved on a chime by moving your finger back and forth like this. I'm going to get a bigger chime. I think you'll hear it better. And you can control the speed of that. So and you can also four-in-hand your chimes. So just like with bells, you hold them the same way if you know how to four-in-hand. You just make sure you got a good grip on them. You can just damp them the same way. So four-in-hand and Shelley work like that. So what can't your chimes do? Well, you can't mart a chime because your chime can break. So marting a chimes is definitely a no-no. You can't shake a chime. Well, you can, but there's nothing, when you shake a bell, there's of course metal on either side for it to hit, and that's what makes the shaking sound. And here, you can only ring so fast, so you don't get that same shaking sound. You shouldn't mallet it on the table. So using a mallet on your chime on the table. And some other stop sounds are difficult because chimes, especially the smaller chimes, stop vibrating quite quickly. So it takes a very light touch when you're manipulating using the slot of your chime. So adapting the bell techniques to chimes. So instead of an echo, we use a vibrato. So this is exactly the same thing, but it's a controlled vibrato. So instead of just wiggling your finger, you do it on the beat. So 1. It makes a very nice sustained sound, and you get that same wah, wah, wah effect. Instead of malleting on the table, we can use a finger damp. So just holding your finger on the slot, and you use that for malleting, for mallet lift. You can release your finger instead of marting, instead of mart lifting, plucking, pluck lifting. Instead of shaking, they suggest using a vibrato. Just a way to get a similar effect. Singing bell is just a way to get a sustained sound, and chimes go on forever. That lasts a fairly long time. And then you may have to re-ring depending on how long that singing bell is supposed to go on for. And again, thumb damping, just using the finger damp. For some of the larger chimes, you may need to put more finger on the slot or add another on the other side. Either, really kind of choke up, and you can get it quite dry or a little wetter depending on how much you cover of the slot and how many fingers you use. So I would use chimes instead of bells depending on the age and the strength of your ringer. If you're going somewhere you just want one case, chimes are certainly lighter, smaller, more portable. If you can cram into a smaller space at a different time to COVID, of course. But you can just have your chimes. You don't need to have foam. Tables are good if you're playing with, sharps and flats and accidentals and whatnot. But you can cram into a smaller space, I think, using chimes. You can use chimes to highlight a melody by ringing it on chimes with other instruments. They blend lovely with wind instruments as well. Or you can accompany a bell melody using chimes, so using them to highlight a melody, using them as accompaniment, and they just give a nice mellow sound and a different, depending on what tone it is you want in your music. So in terms of notation, you can tell when a composer has asked in a bell piece for chimes to be used by the shape of the note head. So here we have a quarter note and the note head's colored in. It's a diamond shape. And then here's a diamond shaped chime note that's a half note. Some publishers also put the hand chime notes in red. So they still use the diamond shapes, but you'll see that they've denoted both the bass note here and the trebles are chimes, and then these notes here, which look like melody notes, are bells. So they're using the chimes to accompany the bells in this circumstance. So I have a couple of resources that you should know about if you have Chimes, if you're working with Chimes, if you're using Chimes in school. Chimeworks.com is a resource that's really great. There is a subscription, but there's also some free items on the website as well. It's a fairly reasonable price. And they have lesson plans and music and techniques and all kinds of great resources on chimeworks.com. So that's a great resource. Also, there are 5 initial lesson plans for getting people started with getting new ringers, ringing chimes, published by the Handbell Musicians of America, hand chime curriculum by Marilyn Lake. And that's a free download. So by all means, go onto the Handbell Musicians of America website and check that resource out as well. And happy chiming!